In this video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 election map based on the latest polling averages from 538. We have a ton of new data that has been added recently, including this new poll from Nevada conducted by the New York Times that shows Donald Trump leading over Joe Biden by 13 points. This has considerably skewed the polling average. We also have a new poll from Washington State that shows Trump leading by 5 points, according to the Independent Center. As a result, we have a lot of new data that has changed many of these polling averages, and in this video, we're going to take a look at what the electoral map looks like as a result. We'll begin with the western half of the US, and then slowly move our way east. So starting off with Washington State, Trump may be ahead in that most recent poll, but previous polls have given Biden a slight edge. So averaging out all the data, Biden leads by 7.7 percentage points in the state of Washington, which will make it likely blue. Oregon will be a likely Democratic state as well. We only have one poll from the state released in 2024 so far, and it shows the incumbent president leading by 11 points. And finally, in the Golden State of California, Joe Biden is ahead by 20.7%, according to 538's polling average, which means that the Golden State is going to be solid blue. Now, Biden may be ahead in all three of these states, but these margins are considerably weaker than what we saw 4 years ago, in which all three of the Pacific states were solid blue, with Washington going to Biden by 19 points, Oregon by 16, and California by 29. Moving on to our first two competitive states in the Sun Belt, we have Nevada and Arizona. Both elections were close in 2020, with Arizona being the second closest race of the year. Biden won by just 0.3 of a percentage point, becoming the first Democrat to win the state since 1996. Nevada, on the other hand, has been blue since 2008, but the state is definitely one of the most competitive and a top target for former President Trump. Looking at the polling in Nevada, Donald Trump leads on average by 6.9 percentage points. He has been significantly boosted by this new New York Times poll that shows the former president ahead by a double-digit margin. As a result, Nevada is going to be likely Republican on our map. Arizona, on the other hand, is only going to be lean red, with the former president ahead by 3.5%, according to 538. And in all of these averages, we do see the impact of RFK Jr., as we see Joe Biden is under 40% in a state that he won in the last election. Before we continue, only 9% of you guys are subscribed, so take the time to subscribe right now for more consistent political content like this leading up to November. As for the states here in the middle of the country, all of them are within solid red territory. Donald Trump has performed incredibly well in these states in the last two election cycles. We have polling from every single one of them, and they all show the former president leading by solid margins. Now, we don't have any data from the individual districts in Nebraska, but the first and third districts are likely to be solid red. The third district is actually the most Republican voting region in the entire country, while the second district is going to be more of a toss-up, but Donald Trump does currently have an advantage. In Colorado and New Mexico, we actually have some relatively new polls from Colorado. Biden leads on average by 7 points, according to the average of the 4 polls that have been conducted in 2024. However, this is still a much smaller margin, less than half of his margin from 2020, when he was able to win by 14 points. So Colorado is going to be likely blue. New Mexico will be a likely Democratic state as well, with the incumbent president ahead by 9.5 percentage points. Now, both of these polls are from last year. We simply don't have any new data from New Mexico, but the state is likely more competitive than what these older polls show us. And to finish off the western half of the continental US, we have the Lone Star state of Texas. Texas is a very interesting case because Donald Trump hasn't been the best performer down here. In 2016, he won the state by 9 points. It was an okay margin, but a step down from Mitt Romney's 16-point margin 4 years prior. And then in 2020, Trump managed to win by just over 5 points. In 2024, though, Texas is going to be likely Republican, with Donald Trump ahead by nearly 10 points, according to the polling average, which will make the state likely red. And so with the western half of the continental U.S. filled in, Donald Trump leads with 98 electoral votes to Biden's 89. Moving on to Alaska and Hawaii. Alaska is going to be a solid red state, with Trump ahead by 18 points on average. The most recent Independent Center poll has the former president ahead by 23 points. Now, Hawaii should be a solid blue state, but according to the latest data, that simply isn't the case. We've only had one poll come out of the state so far, and that was conducted by the Independent Center. Biden leads by 8 percentage points over Trump and Kennedy. So when you factor in the impact of RFK Jr., Biden leads by just 8 percentage points, and this really isn't all that surprising considering his poor handling of the Maui fires. However, it is still a significant drop from the 30-point margin that Biden won the Aloha State by 4 years ago. Now, moving on to the eastern half of the U.S., we're going to start off with the South, and there are, just like this region with Montana, Wyoming, and the Dakotas, we have a lot of states here that will be very solid red, and the latest polls all show that, so I'm going to fill them in right now to avoid wasting time. So in the South, we have Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana. These are all solid red states, and the latest polling all affirms this fact. And to fill in the rest of the South, we're going to begin with Virginia and move our way down to Florida. Starting off in the Commonwealth of Virginia, Biden won this state by double digits in 2020, but just a year after his victory, Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, was elected governor, becoming the first major statewide official to be elected as a Republican in over a decade, which suggests that Virginia is not blue as previously thought. And so looking at the polling for 2024, we see this reflected in the data. Joe Biden only leads by 3 percentage points according to the polling average from all the polls that we have in 2024 so far. Really, it's a very weak margin, even worse than Clinton's performance here in 2016, which will make Virginia our first lean Democratic state on this map. Now, in North Carolina, this was very competitive in 2020. The state voted for Trump by 1.3 percentage points. The last time it voted blue was 2008, a very narrow Obama victory. And before that, you would have to go back to Jimmy Carter. Now, looking at the polling for this race, Trump leads by 6.2 percentage points on average. It's not even close. If you look at the polling from 2020, Biden was supposed to win North Carolina. He eventually lost it. He underperformed pretty significantly. And Biden actually led throughout the entirety of the election cycle on the polling average. But now in 2024, we're basically seeing the exact opposite happen. North Carolina is going to be likely red. Now, Georgia is a competitive state that Biden actually won in the last election. He came out on top with a 0.24% margin of victory. Now, look at the polling in 2024. Trump leads by 6. In 2020, once again, Biden was supposed to win. Now, the polling was a little bit closer. The Georgia victory for Biden was definitely a pretty big surprise considering that he lost North Carolina. But in 2024, Trump is going to take both of these states back. So Georgia is going to be likely red as well. And finally, in Florida, 30 electoral votes, the Sunshine State has seen a very significant shift over the last few years. In 2020, it was one of the closest states in the country, well, at least it was supposed to be, and in the end, it was still pretty close. Trump won by 3.4%, but in 2022, Marco Rubio won re-election to the Senate by a solid margin, and Ron DeSantis won re-election as governor by that same margin. And when you look at polling just 4 years after Trump's 3.4 percentage point victory, Trump now leads by 9.6 percentage points in the state. It's 30 electoral votes. It is a huge prize. Over the last few decades, Florida has always been one of the most competitive states in the country, and that simply isn't true anymore. As a result, Florida, just like North Carolina and Georgia, will be likely red as well. Now, moving up into the Northeast, we're going to fill in these states before we move on to the Midwest, which is really going to be the most consequential region in the country. But we're going to start by filling in these solid Democratic regions. We have the District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, as well as Vermont, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. Now, there are 3 states in this tri-state area, though, that I do want to look at closer. Starting off in New Jersey, where Joe Biden leads by 5 points, according to the only poll we've had from the state. This is according to Emerson College, which is a pretty reputable pollster. Biden leading by 5 points against Trump and Kennedy is an absolutely abysmal margin. Yes, Democrats have struggled there because of Bob Menendez, but if you look at the margin from 2020, Biden won by 16 points, over 3 times what we're seeing right now. So New Jersey is going to just barely be a likely Democratic state. Connecticut is going to be likely blue as well, with the incumbent president leading by 11 points, according to these 2 relatively old Emerson College polls. And finally, in New York, for a while, Biden was only ahead by around 10 points, but there's this one new poll from Slingshot Strategies that shows the incumbent president leading by 19 that has brought the average of all 4 polls released so far this year to Biden plus 12, exactly what he needs for the state to be considered solid, and he got really lucky there, so New York is going to be solid blue. And to finish off New England, we still have New Hampshire and Maine. New Hampshire is going to be relatively competitive. The state was pretty close in 2016 when Donald Trump lost it by just 0.37 percentage points. Biden did do much better in 2020, winning it by 7. In 2024, though, the latest polling shows the incumbent president ahead on average by exactly 5 points, which will make New Hampshire just barely a likely Democratic state. And finally, up in Maine, the at-large vote is currently going to Trump, according to the polling, with him leading by 2.5 percentage points, while in the 1st district, Biden leads by 12 on average, and in the 2nd district, Trump has a 17-point lead. This is a very significant shift from the last election, and basically from every single election we've seen over the last few decades. Maine has been a reliably blue state going all the way back to 1998. That was the last time a Republican, George H.W. Bush, won the state of Maine. And so with this filled in, no candidate has reached 270 electoral votes, so the election once again will be decided by the Midwest. We'll begin with Minnesota, which is the state with the longest Democratic voting streak, not having voted red since 1972. The latest polling, though, does show that Biden is on track to continuing this streak, as he does lead on average by 3 points, although the election is expected to be much closer than it was 4 years ago when he won by 7.5 percentage points. And so Minnesota is going to be lean Democratic. Iowa, on the other hand, this was once a very competitive state. Go back to 2008, 2004, it flip-flopped quite a few times. However, since Trump won it in 2016, Iowa has been a reliably red state. Kim Reynolds, the governor, was reelected in 2022 by over 20 points. And so according to the polling average, Donald Trump leads by 12 points in Iowa, which will make it solid red. In Wisconsin, though, this is going to be one of the most important states. They say that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania are really going to be the ones that will decide the 2024 election. And out of the 3, Wisconsin is definitely the most conservative, as we've seen over the last few election cycles in both presidential, Senate, and gubernatorial elections. So if Trump is going to win any 3 of these states, it's going to be Wisconsin first. And according to the polling average, Donald Trump is going to win by 1.2 percentage points, which makes it lean Republican. Now, the really surprising thing is that, yes, in 2020, Biden did win Wisconsin. He won it by 0.63, but this margin is actually smaller than Trump's margin when he won it in 2016. And if you look at the polling from Wisconsin in 2020, Biden was supposed to win by 8.4 percentage points. It wasn't even remotely close. And so that is why Trump actually leading in the state is such a big deal. And finally, in Illinois, Biden leads by 10 points according to the only remotely recent poll that we have, which will make the state only likely for the Democrats. And to finish off the map, we only have 3 states left, and still no candidate has reached 270 electoral votes. But beginning in Michigan, Donald Trump currently leads by 0.6 percentage points, although the race here is narrowing. Now in 2020, Biden won the state by 3 points. He was supposed to win it by 8, so again, the polls here have consistently overestimated Joe Biden. But now in 2024, Trump leading does suggest that he may have the advantage. However, Biden is going to perform the best in Michigan out of the 3 former blue wall states. Wisconsin's the most conservative. Michigan is going to be the most liberal. However, right now, Donald Trump still maintains an edge. In Ohio, Donald Trump is also ahead, now leading by 9.6 percentage points. This state used to be a bellwether state. It basically voted with whoever was the presidential winner. That streak was broken. That streak, which lasted 60 years, was broken in 2020 when Joe Biden won the election, but Trump won Ohio, because Ohio now is one of the most conservative states in the country. And finally, in Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, this is Joe Biden's birth state, and a state that he really has to win if he wants to get to 270. And right now, the polls show him behind Trump by nearly 2 points, which will make Pennsylvania lean Republican. And so this is what the 2024 electoral map looks like based on the latest polling average, according to 538. Donald Trump is on track to win the 2024 election with 315 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 223. Thank you guys so much for watching, and make sure you like this video down below if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't for more content like this leading up to November, and comment down below who you think is going to win the election.